Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts, and this is the season finale. I decided to put them all as one so you can have both options. This is my interview with Just.Another.Good.Story with Mathilde, and enjoy. Okay, I have a special guest with me today. I have Mathilde from Just Another Good Story. And how are you doing today?
Hi, Justin. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm glad you're here. This is going to be great. So the first question I have is Just Another Good Story. Where did that name come from? Like where did that start?
Um, Actually, so the name, I was at first doing book reviews and film reviews. So nonfiction. I mean, you can't say nonfiction for film. So it was more like real story or based on real stories or documentaries, lots of documentaries. And at first I wanted to do that. And I said, okay, I'm gonna do films and books in this like nonfiction idea. And I said, okay, I need to find a name that is not, like lots of Bookstagram accounts are about books in the names, like it's like Book Sapiens, the account that I love, or and I was like, okay, I need to find a name that is more about the story than the books or the particular like tool you use. And so I said, okay, I just also had to find variously a name that wasn't taken on Instagram, and that is a challenge. That really is a challenge. And I think I wanted to go with Another Good Story, and it's also very close to a brand that already exists, and it was already taken. So I was like, Just Another Good Story, it's like just something else, and you can find one book that you really like, one thing that you really like, one film that you really like, and then say, oh, there's another one. And it's just like about just another one, and there are so many good stories out there.
Interesting. So the name came from necessity. That's interesting.
It did. I'm being honest. I didn't like, I mean, I did like really, I had to think this through so much because I was like, I can't change it then. Obviously, like, I mean, you can change it technically, but it's like your brand name. You better really like what you chose because
Yeah.
it's better to stick with it. And so, yeah, I just like tried a lot. I wrote down, I don't know, I think 30 different names, and I could see that story, another story, that kept coming up. And then I think it's actually my boyfriend who was like, Just Another Good Story. And I was like, that sounds good. It's a bit
Yeah.
long, but that sounds good. I hope it
Interesting.
does sound good.
Interesting. So what were some of the other rejected names?
Oh, I
We
don't
have
remember.
comedy here.
I don't remember. I think I had some really bad ones, some really funny ones. Um, I don't remember actually. I should find this list because it would be really
Books,
funny.
books with words.
Yeah, exactly. Like words. I mean, you try
Yeah.
everything. That was honestly, that was a challenge, finding a name that would be like working for films and books. And in the end, I'm just like, as you know, talking about books now.
Yeah.
So I went through all this pain for nothing, but I'm happy with my name. So, and I kind of feel like, it's weird to say I invented it now, because I really, it seems so natural to me. It's like it's always been there. And so,
Yeah. So it's going to be books and films as well. Was it going to be mainly documentaries, or was it going to be, because I looked on your website and I saw mainly documentary. Were you going to talk about other films as well, or fiction films, or was it strictly nonfiction?
it would have been strictly nonfiction, like so
Hmm.
documentaries. but it would have been fiction as well in terms of real stories or biographies.
Mm.
So, for instance, Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
that's a film that I reviewed initially on my page when I was still reviewing films. And I don't think we can call it nonfiction. I don't know, maybe, but it's still, it's not a documentary. It's not real footage.
Yeah.
It's all set up and and kind of invented, and it's not the real people, and the story is adapted. You can't really know if it's all true. So it was more about that, like, because I'm interested by the story behind the thing and like the real things and getting to know people. But at the same time, I feel it's like writing also a biography written by another author, when you're reading,
Mm.
for instance, the biography or of I don't know who, and they didn't write it. So obviously they talked with the person, or they fact checked everything, but still there's a little bit of romance in a way. And so yes, that's mainly documentaries, and I love documentaries. I just thought I should focus on books because this is where, like, I know nothing about films in the end. If you ask me about films, I really know nothing about it. I was like, this is not fair. I shouldn't pretend I'm like an expert about it. I just really like watching documentaries.
Yeah. Now you mentioned Steve Jobs. Are you admirer of him? Do you like him? What about Steve Jobs?
Do I like him? That's a good question. I mean, I've never met him, obviously, so I can't say if I like him or not. The only thing I can say is if based on this film only, so the Steve Jobs film,
Hmm.
I don't think I would like him. But he
Yeah.
is a fascinating, sorry, person. uh and obviously it's like all those creators. I think I would give you the same answer about Elon Musk and
Yeah, that
all
was going
those
to be the
that
next question. Was how
exactly.
do you feel about Elon Musk and other entrepreneurs in that venture? Do you admire them, or how do you feel about them?
So I admire them in a way that is, I want to know their story. I want to know where
Mm.
they come from. um Also because I think it's interesting to see that it's not only a pattern. It's not like, I mean, some of them, but it's not like I was really rich. My parents were really rich, and I just went to the perfect
Yeah.
university or college,
Yeah.
and then had the right job opportunity, and then all the idea, or it's just about talent, very
Mm.
often genius. But I think it's really interesting to learn just the background story, and think that, okay, maybe it could be me. Maybe if I mean, maybe I'm not saying everybody can think they're geniuses, but they can think maybe I have a talent here. and even if it's not true, because there's only one Steve Jobs, and there are no, like, you don't have thousands of people like that. So obviously not everyone can become Steve Jobs or
Yeah.
Elon Musk, but it's good to believe that you can.
Do you think there's a danger in society of putting these people on the pedestal that we kind of have done with the Bill Gates and Elon Musk, uh, Richard Branson, Steve Jobs? Do you think it goes too much into the psyche of we're kind of getting a little off track, but
Mm.
looking for a savior to save us instead of trying to save ourselves and save the planet? Are we looking to almost look for a scapegoat and be like, well, Elon Musk will figure it out, or
Mm.
Richard Branson will figure it out, or Mark Zuckerberg will figure it out?
So I think it's really interesting, and I would start by not answering your question and saying I think the real danger with putting those people on pedestal, as you said, is that many, that we don't hear about all the stories of those who failed. And that is the real danger for me, because, maybe 0.01% made it, and the rest just failed. And I think it's a real danger, because young people now are hearing about all those success stories. Okay, me too. I can go in my garage and I'll work hard, so hard. And, I'll spend years in my garage doing nothing and just working on my projects. I'm convinced I have a great idea. And sometimes it just doesn't go well. It's just, you don't succeed and you fail. And maybe you don't have the right skills. Maybe your idea is not so good. There can be so many reasons. Or maybe you just have bad luck. I don't know. I don't really believe in bad luck. But anyway, so to answer your question then now, about the danger of thinking that they will figure everything out, I think it's a matter of personality, because I'm not like this. Like, I wouldn't rely on other people to do things. I think that's one of my flaws, my multiple flaws, by the way. Like, thinking, okay, I can do it myself. And I talked about that in a post recently. But so it's a question of personality. Some people will say, oh yes, they'll do it. Like, let's not worry about it. Climate change, or the earth disappearing or becoming uninhabitable, they'll figure a way out for us, or just solve the problem. But I think, and I hope, that many other people are just like, I need also to look for a way of doing that. Also, because those people may be experts in some areas, but are definitely not maybe the more ethical persons to deal with those matters. And I would like expert scientists and people specialized in that to really look at those things. And I think they do.
Do you think we're not hearing enough from them because they're not celebrities?
Definitely. I mean, I've read so many books that are unknown, or, because it's more boring than someone who's gonna be who's gonna be either very famous, or anyway he has this platform and you're gonna hear about him and everything he says is gonna be heard, or because they do it in a show manner that is really cool and really interesting. And maybe not all of them, but maybe most scientists would say it in a more ethical way and serious way, and people won't listen to them as much. I mean, media just want stories and think that are going to buzz. They don't want a boring scientist that is a genius and that really says like super interesting things and way more interesting things, but they don't care. What they want is viewers, readers. And so definitely.
They want the person who's going to disrupt everything, like an Elon Musk, who, kind of, he's got kind of an interesting character of the way he talks. And I think the media in some ways has fallen in love with that aspect of him, in the same way that they kind of did with the Steve Jobs. You don't see Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, they talk about him, but he's kind of in the background. He's kind of like the Bill Gates, whereas Musk is kind of in the front, where like he is on Twitter, he is out there, you're seeing what his reactions are. Whereas it seems like Mark Zuckerberg is keeping himself in the back. But yeah, moving on. One thing I wanted to ask you about is, did the idea for Just Another Good Story come from Instagram or a website?
So do you mean if initially I wanted to build a website or an Instagram?
Yes. Which came first?
So I think that was really the Instagram thing, because I work in digital and social media especially. And so I thought it would be good to see it from the inside. And so that was, and it's like this trend of being a creator and having your own business, but I don't think it goes without having a website, because in the end, if you want real traffic and a platform that centralizes the traffic and your brand, you need a website. So I'm not taking care of it at all lately. I haven't done it for like, I think 1 year. I haven't posted an article or anything. I just have a website, and I'll get back to it when I have time. I've been really busy with my jobs and lots of other things, so that's fine. But I think if you've got Instagram, you need to have a website. If you've got a website, maybe you don't need an Instagram account. Maybe you can have something else, some other platforms, So it was just logical for me to build a website.
Interesting. Now, did you build the website yourself?
Yes, I did. Because again, I work in the digital environment, digital sector, and so I knew how to build a website. I don't code, clearly. I know like basic HTML, and then there's this great thing that is called WordPress that makes it really easy. I mean, you've got Wix, you've got other platforms like this that are equivalent, but that make it really easy for you to build your website, and you don't need incredible skills. And I just wanted to, not use a template, but just being able to do everything from scratch and change it if I want, and just have full control over my website. So yes, I did it. But I learned a lot. I mean, I'm not saying that I did it and I was like, yeah, this is so easy. Not at all. I spent a lot of hours trying to figure out the platform and figure out what I wanted as well. So it's not easy, but I think it's doable. And I'm really glad I did it.
Which is easier, Canva or WordPress?
And so with the Wix, I think that's why
Wix.
also I didn't choose it. It's because they have, but maybe I'm wrong and maybe it's not like that anymore. But I think it's because they had templates. And so maybe it's not Wix, but they had template, and you could not modify your website like a lot. Like there was a limit to your power and your control over your website. So it meant that if you chose a template, then you couldn't change it, or you'd have to change your whole website. And that's a lot of, like, I read a lot of reviews and yeah, a lot of like people saying that was like, if they could do it again, they wouldn't start with this other platform, because then they had to redo all their websites on WordPress. And so that's why I just picked WordPress. But I'm not an affiliate, and I'm not trying to sell WordPress, and I'm not even taking care of my website anymore. So maybe it's not the best thing out there anymore.
Interesting. Now, where are you originally from?
So I'm from France, so southwest of France, near Bordeaux. I think that's large enough for people to understand. I think if I say the name of my city, people are not going to know it. Or maybe internationally. So the name is Angoulême, and there's a film festival there. There's a comics festival there, like international festivals. Actually, some things going on, but it's a small city, so I don't expect people to know it. I just say Bordeaux because people know the wine and generally know approximately where it is in France. So.
Now, currently, you're in London. How did that like come about? Just the job, or did you always want to be in London?
So actually, my boyfriend was already working in London, and we met in the US, and then I came back to France to finish my studies, and I came back to Italy, and then I went to London. And I was, after a few years, I was a bit tired of long distance.
Mm.
That wasn't my thing. That's not how I wanted to continue our relationship. And so I said, okay, I think the option is for me to just move to London. And I was happy with it. I've always wanted to work abroad, like not in France, at least at the start of my career, and English speaking country. So that was easy for me. And I just said, okay, I'll go there. I leave my job, I go there, and I'll just find a job there. And that's what happened.
Now, did you learn English by coming to America?
So I learned English at school, actually. And
Mm.
when I was 14, that's a funny story. When I was 14, I was already obsessed with living abroad. And so I told my parents, like I was 13, I told my parents, I want to go study abroad. I want to do my high school abroad. And they're like, you're studying. No, you're not. You're not gonna just go somewhere else to do your secondary school and high school. This is ridiculous. Like, just stay here. You can learn English here. That's fine. And you can go on vacation. Like, we can send you in families, maybe, during the summer if you want to learn English and all that. No, no, I really want to go. And at some point, I think I annoyed them so much that they said, okay, you know what? You find like a program that is safe for 13 years old
Yeah.
to be sent to a family and study there. And we'll see like the budget, and we'll see if
Mhm.
he can send you. And so that's what I did. Like, I spent my time looking for a program, and I found one actually to go to Canada. And to go there for 4 months,
Mm.
and just do some, like, take some classes and stay in high school for almost half of the year there. And they said, okay. And they sent me. So that's where I really started learning English, because school is good, but not good enough. And
Yeah.
then I just kept like contact with all my friends from Canada, and then later went to the US for an MBA. But that's how that's how it happens.
Now, so when you wanted to study abroad, did it matter where you were studying abroad, or did you want to go to North America? Is it mainly to get to North America, or was it just I want to get away from I want to get away from France?
So I mean, said like that, it looks bad, but no, I didn't want to get away from France. I just really knew I wanted to be in an English speaking country, and I really wanted to experience a different like education as well,
Mm.
because the US and Canada,
Mm.
like, there are education systems that are so different, and I really wanted to discover that, and like to get away from the traditional system a bit of France. And no, I didn't necessarily want to go to Canada or the US. It's just opportunities. And
Interesting.
yes, I could have gone to Australia, but I'm really afraid of spiders. I don't know, and I think it's relevant. And and so I would be like, the US is fine. The US is fine. So yeah,
We have spiders too, just so you know.
yeah, I know we have them here. We have them in France.
I don't know.
But
I,
I
I
don't
don't know
know.
a country yet that unless you go to like Antarctica, maybe there won't be spiders there, but
True,
they might be
true.
able to live through that. I don't know. They maybe have to live through those temperatures as well.
No, that's true. But my sister, when she was in high school, she had a program with her high school. Like, they went for, I think, 2 weeks in Australia with the high school, like, amazing
Mm.
opportunity. And she did say that it was pretty hardcore, like the spider thing,
Wow.
and like pretty big ones and stuff. In France, we have them, but they're pretty
Yeah, they're
small, and
like
I'm not
yeah, like
disturbed.
oh.
But really big ones. And at the time, I was young, and I couldn't really deal with my fear of spiders. Now it's like I went to Costa Rica, and I was with like huge spiders, and I was fine. But at the time, I thought I'm not going to ruin my great and broad experience for something as ridiculous as insects.
So I'm guessing the film Arachnophobia is not your favorite film.
I haven't seen this film. What was that?
It's about spiders, and it's just
Okay.
it's kind of like a horror thriller, but it's PG-13. It's probably rated differently in France, but it's there's a lot of spiders in that movie. And I remember seeing it and I was just like, oh, that was creepy. You don't want to see spiders crawling on your television set and things like that. It's like, you know.
I mean, funnily enough, I'm obsessed with them. Like
Really?
like I really want to learn about them, and I watch documentaries about them. Like I just don't want them in my bed, It's just that, like, I find they're fascinating creatures. I just don't want to have them
I just
in
don't
my
want to be
bedroom.
in my
That's
bedroom. Interesting. So what part, so when you did come to the United States, what part of the United States were you in?
So I lived in Minneapolis because I was doing the MBA in Carleton University.
The coldest place in the world.
I don't know if it's the coldest place in the world, but it's really cold. And I was there at the wrong periods. I mean, I knew it before,
Yeah.
and before going there. And we had that, I don't remember how they called it, but it was like something super rare they hadn't had in years, and where we had like minus 50 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's
And they closed the university. Like it was that bad, and they told us like don't go out. We went out, but they were like don't go out, it's really dangerous. Like if you stay more than, I'm going to say something wrong, but I think it was like more than 10 minutes you could die, because it's really dangerous. So
So it's
yeah.
that kind of weather where you gotta wear you gotta look like a Star Wars character where everything is covered, your face, everything is like.
Yes, my
Yes.
my lashes were frozen. Like after 2 minutes outside, the lashes were frozen. It was kind of crazy, but it was a great experience. At
Wow.
least I can say that. I've
Yeah.
I've I've seen that. I've lived through that. So, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Once it
it was,
gets
sorry.
once it gets to those teens, it starts to, yeah, you start to feel it on your face.
Yeah.
And it's like you gotta be like, now you gotta wear like a whole mask over it. It was in New York. I've experienced that. So it's one thing I'm fascinated that I noticed from like reading a lot of your stuff. You talk a little bit about, you kind of hint at it. I wonder if you would elaborate a little more about being an immigrant and coming to London and coming to that. And you kind of hint at like the racism or the prejudice that comes from that. What is some of the experiences? I know this is now like we're kind of segueing into a really tough topic, but it's something I noticed in some of your posts.
No, you're right. And it's something that I'm really interested in. And I don't think it applies to me
Mm,
because I have I'll say privilege, because it's really a privilege. And we talk about white privilege, and it's true.
hmm
I have the privilege of being white. And so even if I'm from France and I've lived in the UK, I've lived in the US and Canada, I'm white, and people are not
hmm
racist over me. They
hmm
they may be like making fun of me for my English, for my accent, but it's like that's okay. But what I really like, what I'm really interested in, what I really like to read about and talk about on my account is racism, and actually like immigrants, and a lot in the UK and the US particularly. We have that a lot in France as well. It's just you look different, and I don't like, people are afraid, or just like you're not
Yeah.
like me, and so rejecting people. And so we have this like whole subject now, and I honestly don't really have an opinion about it, but people saying, oh, when there was the the war in Syria, like you weren't welcoming refugees from Syria. Like there was a lot of racism, and also people were saying, no, like don't open our frontiers to them. And now people are saying, and with Ukraine, there is no problem welcoming people. So I think it's a totally different situation. And I don't know if it's comparable or not, but there's this thing where in the UK, even if you're not, and if you're like a refugee, and that's the whole difference between immigrant, like economic immigrant, and refugee, where you literally have to flee your country because you're in danger, and you still face so much racism, and people think you're here just to benefit from the system, and yeah, and I think that's the whole question, the whole thing that's fascinating me. So that's this first aspect, like refugee versus economic immigrants, and thinking that people are here just to benefit from the system. And the second aspect of racism is just like people who've been there all their lives, multiple generations, and most of them in the UK, in the US, have been brought there, here, there. And so, it's like now, like it was great for countries to bring them here, like there, and as slaves in the US, or even just like to benefit from them when they needed them, or just cheap labor. And now it's just like, why are you here? Come back from where you come from. And it's like, I come from here. I'm British, I'm American. And that's the whole subject that I don't know enough about. And I try to read so much about it because it's fascinating. And it's something we don't see. If you're not a refugee, if you're not different from the white stereotype of the white male, you don't see that, you don't notice that. And it's not because you're racist, you're sexist or anything. It's just because you don't realize. And I think that's why you need to read about it, and that's why I share so many books about that.
Do you notice, do you think it's more the older generation, or do you think the younger generations have this same problem as well?
So I would hope that the new generation is way more open-minded. But unfortunately, and we see it with France and French elections, for instance, many, many, many young people are racists, rejects difference, rejects immigrants, want to close their frontiers. And for me, it's really weird because obviously all my friends and all the people I hang out with are very open-minded, welcoming, and we're one world, we're one civilization, and there's no like I'm French, I'm British. But unfortunately, I think we're more open-minded than the previous generations, and we see it with grandparents, with parents, and we see it a lot that is different. It's difficult for them to approach some subjects, homosexuality, transgender subjects like this, that for us are so obvious and so necessary, but for them difficult to approach. But it doesn't mean that we're all accepting everything, unfortunately.
Do you think that do you think that if we had, do you think it's more of a country and a city thing? Do you think that like maybe that's where it's coming from? The fact that there's a lack of an awareness, like you see in most of the United States, the cities seem to be more against racism. And then when you go out to these smaller towns, that's where it's come. Do you think if we united more, if people had more access to the city, the country and the city, do you think that that would solve some of the racism? Do you think the racism is coming from a lack of awareness? Do you think it's coming from the parents? or do you think it's something else?
So so I will answer your question, but I have no idea like what's the
Yeah,
dynamic, and like I can't answer your question. I just can give my
yeah,
opinion. But I would say that we see it in the US, for instance, it's also an historical thing. It's like
yeah,
some regions, states
yeah.
have different
The
history.
South.
Yeah, the South.
The
And
South has
so
a very strong history, and you still see those things there. Whereas you go up to like New York, somewhere where it's not as predominant, you don't see it as much. But it does feel like this is happening all over the world. It's not just like you said. It's happening in France. It's happening.
mhm,
If you look at Brexit, um,
yeah.
I went to London right after Brexit. A lot of Brexit was based on racism. It's pretty much paved the way for when I saw what happened with Brexit. I was like, well, there's a sign of Donald Trump in in America, and it seems like what's happening is happening all over the world. And it's like there's this, I don't know. It's fascinating to me because it's when I was there after Brexit, my teacher, who's German, told me that she went to a bar and the bar person said, "We don't serve Germans here."
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah. So my next question was going to be to you: have you experienced prejudice at any level? Were you there after Brexit, or were you there before Brexit, or how long have you been in London?
So I've been in London for a year and a half, so definitely
Okay,
after.
okay. So
But
that's after.
the rule, of, I mean, I don't know if you know about that, but of like you come to London, you start working there, and you get a temporary resident status. Basically, they call
Yeah.
it the Brazil status. It stopped I think 6 months after I came. So all my friends, etc., that wanted to come to the UK couldn't come anymore, except if, and it's still the case, if they get sponsored by a company. So I
Yeah.
really arrived at this transition phase. That's what was really interesting. And I haven't suffered from any discrimination based on my origin, on the fact that I come from France and I'm not a British person. I do think it's more difficult to connect with British people because it's a very closed community, I feel like, and it's very difficult to just have British friends in the end.
Mhm.
That we managed to be friends with so many French, Italian people. It's really easy. Spanish people, really easy. But British people, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they discriminate me. I don't think so. I think but I haven't faced that, and I think it's because I live in London. Let's face
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
You talk about your German teacher.
London's like New
Yeah,
York in certain ways. If you look
exactly.
at the structure of it, they have their own Times Square. They have their, it's,
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
so many people say it's not really England. I mean, obviously it's England and it's the UK, but it's not representative of the mentality or even the life in the rest of the UK, because
Mhm.
it's London. So maybe if I went to, I don't know, Manchester or anywhere else, I would say something different. But I haven't seen that. And you talked about whether it would come from the family or the city you grew up in. I
Mhm.
think it definitely has an impact. And I think in capital cities, you know, people are more open-minded because there's a mix of cultures and of origins that is incredible. And so people younger are converted to different cultures and different people. And and it's not like, it's not a shock or anything. And I don't think it should be, by the way. but the family as well plays obviously an important role, because if since you're a kid, you're told by your parents,
Yeah.
oh no, like, yeah, like you cannot, you can hang out only with white people, or
Yeah.
oh, like people from Europe coming in the UK to go to school or to work, you shouldn't hang out with them, you should stay with English people. And I don't know if it exists, but it must, because there's a lot of racism. And
Yeah.
so there must be people thinking like that. And so definitely, I think as a kid, if you've been raised like that and you've grown up with this idea that other people that are not white are bad, it's difficult to then, I mean, you can, and you can form your own opinion, but it's difficult. And that's where family plays a super important role, and parents play a super important role in so many areas, not just that: food,
Yeah.
nutrition, sport, everything. So yes, definitely.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, you look at it seems like as Brexit and things like that are happening, the other side is starting to come together. Like you look in France, 4 political parties, formed one party to be, the left, So,
Mhm.
so it seems like with with the rise of this racism, we're also seeing the rise of the opposition to it, and then they're kind of like neck and neck in some ways as who is going to take over the countries. Are we going to be the countries of equality, or are we going to be the country that's like, no, we want to have these strict institutions of making sure that only certain people can come in? We're seeing that in the United States right now, even with supposedly Biden, who's on the left. It's we're still seeing a lot of deportation, just as much as Trump. So it seems like that's something I'm noticing, is that especially when I read that in France, that that the 4 parties uh, formed together to become a. I don't know if you still keep up with with the French politics since you're now in London, but do follow that, or what?
I do from far. I followed it a lot during the presidential elections, because
Hmm.
obviously that was really important for me to understand the context, and being sure, by the way, like to vote for the right person, or and also, yeah, just to understand what was going on, because it seemed really boring. We had this candidate, Eric Zemmour,
Hmm.
uh, who and Le Pen, but
Le Pen.
Eric Zemmour was like this guy coming out from nowhere, and a division in France that was just insane. And I was really having discussions with my friends, my family, and saying, what if he becomes president? And
Yeah.
that was really scary, because he had ideas that were really
Yeah.
insane. So now I follow from far, let's say. I try to keep
Yeah.
up to date, but it's difficult to keep up to date with everything,
Yeah.
first of all. And I think it's going back to, like, now we have a president, and I mean legislative elections are coming up and all that, but I'm not as invested in following this, and maybe I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but yes, that's
Yeah.
pretty much it.
I mean, because you can see the similarities between the two. You can see. I don't want to turn this into a thing, but you could see, like, there's the rise of Trump, and then there's the rise of this other guy. It it's almost opened a chain reaction to all these other countries, where you're seeing this type of figure emerge on
Yeah.
in a bunch of different countries. It's not just the United States. It's I don't but we could debate that for hours.
We could, we
One
could.
thing, one thing I would like to talk about is, do you think books can heal that divide? between the two, or is it kind of a lost cause?
No, I don't think it's a lost cause, and I'm a very optimistic person, so I would
Yeah,
never say like this is over,
yeah,
except when it's really over. And so no, I would say the role of books is really to give you a fresh perspective on things and to
yes,
open your mind and change your vision of the world. And so I think it has this power. There are some books, obviously, that are extremist and that will reinforce people's vision.
yeah,
If it's racism, that would
yeah,
reinforce racism and all that. But with the right books, or at least with some of the books I suggest and I recommend on my page, I really think they have the power to change people's perspective and opinion, because versus social media, which played a super important role in extremism and still
mhm,
play. I mean, I just posted a review today about Going Dark, and it's a book by Julia Ebner, and she explores that, and she really explains the super important role of social media, the role they played in just like spreading extremism. And and so I think books in this way, at least for myself, made me discover so many things and so many interesting subjects. And so when you see, like, there's this book that is White Tears, Brown Scars. Another book is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. All those books that are
yeah,
perspectives that I think is very difficult to have. Like I wouldn't have had, and
mm,
and it's just, you need to know about it, and if you don't get to meet those people, then you get to read their books and have this fresh perspective. And I always say, like, the only way to grow is to meet people and talk with people. And I think reading a book is
yeah.
meeting people and talking to people.
Do you think that books have the ability, because I mean, if you watch television, you watch film, most people watch these things with their guard on. They're completely like locked down.
Mhm.
But with a book, it seems like you can get into somebody's, you can kind of disarm them. Do you think that's an advantage that books have that other mediums don't have? Is that unknowingly it will somehow kind of, in some ways, I believe, I guess if you only read, extremist books, you wouldn't develop empathy. But I feel like most books in some way, shape or form is going to give you a sense of empathy or perspective of a different idea. Do you think that that's an advantage that books have over, social media, film, television?
Definitely over social media, for sure. Also because social media are very biased. The algorithm in most platforms work in a way that if you already believe in something, you will just see this thing. And it's just gonna be like, oh, I'm interested by that, and it's just gonna push you towards that, and you'll never get
Yeah.
to see the other side. So definitely films. I don't know if I would say that books are better in this perspective and for this aspect, but I'm going to talk about what I know. I'm sure
Mm,
that book can change your perspective on things. I've read a lot of books that changed my perspective on many subjects, or at least opened a door to exploring
mm,
another idea or another thought or another solution. And I think that's what's so important in the world, when what the world needs right now, according to me, in my opinion, is to explore all the solutions and look at all the different sides of the stories.
mm.
Because right now the world is divided, and
Yeah.
people are looking at only one side of the story.
Do you think that's a lack of education? The fact that people are looking at it one-sided? Do you think it's a failure of the educational system, or is it just something that was going to happen no matter what?
um
This
i
divide.
I don't know if the education system plays a role in
Mhm.
all that, but I do think that TV and when I say TV, is just like television, like shows,
Yeah.
and just like you switch on your TV, so not
The
films. But
media, news.
yeah,
I don't know.
news, and also like shows, like the
Mm.
shows, like I don't know, TV, like reality TVs, reality
Yeah.
shows, things like that, and social media. It's not education.
Yeah.
So it's nothing like a book or a good documentary or a very good film, because there are very good films out there. It's nothing like that. And the thing is, now social media are occupying a more and more important place in
Do
our lives.
do you feel we're raising a generation that thinks that by being on social media that they're that that they're basically replacing books? Like, oh, I'm learning because I'm on social media, and it's do
Yes. I mean, yes, no, yes. So it's like, um I can't generalize, and I don't
yeah.
want to. I just think that it's not this generation in particular, it's just having access to social media, and as developed as they are right now, you obviously can think, oh, I can Google that or read the summary of that and I'll know. Or I'm just going to follow this person and see what he says, what she says about that. And I'll have an opinion about it
Mm.
instead of reading. Like the big problem with Facebook is someone sharing an article, saying
Yeah.
something about it, people won't read the article. They will reshare the article. Twitter, the same thing.
Yeah.
There's this thing like,
They'll see the headline and they'll
exactly,
read
it's the
what the
headline,
person said about it as
and they'll
opposed to reading the article. Yeah.
exactly, and they'll see, sorry, what other people said about it, but won't
Yeah.
form their own opinion. And there's this thing now on Twitter, I mean, it's been there for a long time, that is when you retweet an article that you haven't opened. And it happens to me with my job, because we find it on other platforms. And so we know this article, we don't reshare it randomly. But so we don't open it while we see the tweet and open it, we just reshare it. And Twitter now says, you haven't read this article. Do you want to read it first before resharing it?
Yeah.
And why is that so? It's because so many people, Facebook, Twitter, all those platforms, are just sharing articles and sharing a message without really says knowing what it means and what it says. And that's a big problem. And I see it with books. Like, I like to give some takeaways from books and all that, but there's this big like cultural trends, just summarizing books and giving you the key points of the books, and basically telling you don't need to read them. There are so many apps where you don't need to read the book. You can just
Yeah.
look at the
You'll
summary.
read a summary. Yeah. And it's like, it's not the same thing.
And it's not the same thing also, because do you know if it's not like biased? Did they pick the things they wanted to pick, first of all? And did they retranscript it word by word? Or did they interpret it? And that's the danger.
Because you're going to read it and you might find something that's important that that summary may just gloss over. It's like something very, very small, and be like, oh, I didn't, realize that. And that would be exclusive to you,
Exactly.
which is why you're right. When you get into these summary apps, it's like, yes, you'll get an overview of the book, but it's not going to replace the reading of the book. That's why when they say like, oh, how does this CEO read 100 books? It's like, yeah, they're not reading 100. I mean, maybe some are, but if you read 100 overviews or summaries of books, you did not read 100 books.
No. Mhm.
You just read 100 summaries and you got the idea, but you didn't get the details. And the details is what's going to like make you go, huh, oh, I didn't think about that or
Exactly.
that, you know?
Exactly.
It's
And
like
about
reading
your
a newspaper.
previous, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
I said it's like reading a newspaper, but yeah, continue.
yeah, no, exactly. And also about your previous points is that I'm going to write a review on a book and talk about something like, this angle or this takeaway or this thing. And I'm gonna like maybe see a friend who posted, because Bookstagram is like a great community. So like you make friends with a lot of people. And I'm gonna see this friend maybe 1 month later, 1 week, or the following year, is gonna post a review about the same exact book. I'm gonna say something completely different. Not in terms of opinion, but in terms of what I got out from it, what I understood,
Yeah.
and yes, and my not summary, but like what I think I learned from this book. And I'm like, and sometimes you're like, did we read the same book? And it's
Yeah.
really interesting. And that's why I think otherwise there would be only one Bookstagram account on
Yeah.
Instagram, one person doing that. But by
Which is
following,
why it's so important for you to actually read the book, because we're seeing also a
yes,
lot of bookstagrams that are just showing up, showing the same list to make top 20 influential books, and it's the same thing. And there's really nothing they're adding to it, because you'll find out later on, oh, they didn't actually read the book. It's just content for them. But with you, you're actually reading the books and you're giving your ideas of what it is. And that to me is where social media comes in handy, because then you're getting different ideas, but it's only going to come from, you can't substitute the reading part. It's like trying to do an acting and try and skip the idea of learning lines. And it's like, well, that's part of the work to get you to where you need to be. The reading is the work that's going to get you to the idea of it. Now, if
yeah,
you find the book boring or not fun to read, then stop reading it. But don't come out and just say, oh, here, I read this and here's my opinion of it that I posted from somebody else's, you know thing. So yeah, there is a danger of what I would say is labeling. I think
mm,
is the best way to look at it, is we're kind of labeling things. Like you said with the Facebook, you post a Facebook article, they're not going to actually read the article, they're just going to read the summary of it, and they're going to talk about it in the comments section based off of this person's summary,
mm-hmm,
and neither one of them read the article.
yes,
They're just arguing over whether some person's opinion of the article, which is fascinating to me, is that you can post an opinion of an article and have a bunch of people not actually read the article and argue over the opinion of somebody's article that they never even read.
that's social
It's
media. That's social media. But
that
no,
that is there. Yeah.
no, definitely. And I think you're right. I think reading is the process. And when I'm going to share a book about, let's say, leadership, I can't tell you like, oh, these 5 techniques to become a great leader. I can, and sometimes I do. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you need to read the book, because
Yeah.
understanding all that is like going through the process of reading the book and understanding it with your own perspective and applying it to yourself. It's not by reading bullet points that you're going to get anything out of a
Yeah.
book.
Why do you think people are so hesitant to read or to start reading? I don't know if you've come across that with your bookstagram. Are people coming to you and saying, I don't know how to start, or I don't know what to do? Like what would you say to those people that want to do it but just don't know how? Do you think they should, do a calendar and mark it off 5 minutes a day? Like I mean, what do you think?
So I think it's if it's a problem of time, which is often the case, because if people tell you, I don't know where to start, like which book to pick, I would say follow my accounts, and you'll definitely find in all the books that I post all the time, one that you'll be like, oh, interesting subject. Like for instance, today, extremism. Interesting subject. I'm gonna read about that because I'm interested now. If it's a question of time, I would say I'm not I'm not what I would call like a person with a lot of free time. Definitely
Yeah.
not. I travel a lot. I go out a lot with my friends. I see my family a lot. I have a job that is really, really busy. I work really hard. I have very long days. Then I take care of my Instagram. And sometimes I'm like, I forget to read. And so I think the excuse of I'm too busy, and maybe I'm not talking about Elon Musk, for instance, to go back to him. And even Elon Musk reads. So anyway,
Yeah,
but if it's a
exactly.
question of time, I think I'm not saying people lie when they say I don't have time, because I truly believe them. It's a question of organization and commitment. And I think the most single important thing when you want to read is consistency. And if it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. 5 minutes is good enough. 5 minutes versus 0 minutes, it's good enough. In 5 minutes, depending on your reading speed, you can read maybe a chapter or a few pages, and that's already good enough. If you read, let's say, 5 pages per week, how many pages at the end of the week have you read? So I think it's just a question of that. And for myself, I don't need to force myself anymore, because I want to read so much that it's a need for me. But I used to do it, especially when I started my new job and my new responsibilities. I needed to find a schedule. And I just said, okay, what I'm gonna do is wake up. I wake up, I drink some water, maybe go to the bathroom, and then I open my book. And as I'm starting my day like this, no social media, no replying to text or emails or anything. I just open my book and I will read 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes or more, depending on the time at which I wake up and what I have to do in this, during the day. But it's consistency. And then when I go to bed, I have this new, I think you saw my story yesterday, this new lamp that you can clip on your book. And so when my partner is sleeping, I can still keep reading. And so I just do that. And maybe it's 5 extra minutes. And it's just consistency. And I would say, it's like sports, fitness. I've had so many people telling me I don't find time to do sports. And I'm like, at the beginning, I was doing 10 minutes a day. And people were telling me, oh, it's ridiculous, 10 minutes. What do you do in 10 minutes? Like, it's not worth it, 10 minutes. I'm still doing something.
Exactly.
That's the key for me.
Also, I don't think there's an excuse anymore, really, because I mean, look, you can get this, I'm not trying to plug Kindle, but you can get this little device and you can read anywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, so it's like, don't tell me you can't, is it completely distraction free? I'll give you that. But just put headphones on and, blare some music or something, put some classical music, and you've got a fine world to just do something, because everybody has to go somewhere.
Yes, no, I mean, you don't even need a lamp. It's true. You have Kindle as well. And it's
Exactly.
like, what I would tell people as well is bring a book everywhere you go. I bring a book everywhere I go. And even if it's not a physical book, even if it's not a Kindle, put a book on your phone and you have a book, because your metro will be late. Your friends at dinner will be late sometimes, or you're in a bus and anything. And sometimes things come up, and it's good to sometimes just sit here and think and reflect. It's really good. Meditate and just do all that. So not always be busy. I think that's a thing of our generation, like always trying to be busy. But still, if you always have a book with you, then you have so many more opportunities to read.
Now you've mentioned books you wish you read earlier in life. Now, I find that fascinating. Yeah. What what compelled you to post that? Like, was there something? I don't know, I think that's a very important thing for people to look at, is like, what books do you wish you read, before? What do you know now that you didn't know that you wish you knew then, you know? So how did that kind of come about?
So I think it's just like that so many books taught me things, but even if we're not talking about practical skills, like for instance, I have like self-development books that taught me things and gave me some tools to manage my life or improve it. So better tools. And so I'm thinking about essentialism, for instance. I'm thinking about Swagger. That's what I
Mm,
really liked. You lead, take back your weekends, all that, it's like giving you tools. But there are books as well that give you a fresh perspective on the world and impact your vision on the world. And I think those books are as well so important, because I wish I had read earlier this book I talked about before, why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. I
mm.
wish I had known before the history of racism in the UK and this like perspective on it, and all these things where you're like, suspicious minds is a different subject, going dark. So the thing about extremism, suspicious minds, also about how our minds are biased and how it's easy to fall in extremism. And so
Yeah.
all these books that impacted my vision of the world and that I wish I had read earlier. Personal finance, I'll give it one last one. Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah,
That's
which is interesting because it seems like that book comes up with like almost every bookstagram I talk to. Is that so? I ask this to everybody, but I'm going to ask it to you as well. What do you think it is about that? Is it just the simplicity of that book that it does, or because it's not really teaching you complete financial literacy,
no.
but it teaches you enough to kind of like get you started of going, oh, wow, I didn't know about that.
I think it's the mindset, and it's something that every parent should teach their children. Uh, is this, so it calls it like poor mentality and rich mentality, and I think also the fact that it's like him as a kid and how he has a different like vision at home, and a different vision with this father's friends. And I really think it's about that. It's about the message in this book and understanding that depending on your mindset, you can manage to manage your money and your, yeah, differently. So
Yeah.
I think that's really what's fascinating about this book, and I wouldn't recommend it to someone who is already interested in personal finance, because obviously when you're already interested in personal finance, I think you have those basics. So it really gives basics for people who really have no understanding of personal finance. And I think that's a book every kid should have, to just understand those basics. And then if you want to deep dive into it, you can read other books. But
Do you when you read that book, was it eye-opening for you?
so I think I read it really late. I read it, I think, 4 years ago,
Mm,
3 years ago. So I already knew those things. So because my parents taught me those things, and I
mm,
was fortunate enough for that. Um, but still, it was like also discovering the other side, like the poor mentality. And it was like, yeah, this can be game changing without having to like change your personality or like invest or anything. It's just changing your approach of money. And
Interesting. So you already had a lot of these skills already in there. So this was kind of review in some ways, which that's the first time I've heard that from somebody that I've talked to about this book, is that this is more review. So you already had a lot of those skills. Do you think that in the French culture that is more prevalent, the explanation of financial literacy, or is it just your upbringing where you were?
no, yeah, no, I don't think it's a general French thing. I really think my parents did amazing. Uh, I mean, did an amazing job. I'm not saying amazing. I'm just saying that they like. I'm still so thankful for them because
Yeah.
they taught me so many important lessons, and not only financially, but emotionally, in relationship management, so many things, important family, all that they managed to teach me in a way, and without telling me, like, kind of reach that poured out through a story and through an
Yeah.
evolution, through a process. And so they taught me so many things, and I've got so much more to learn, obviously, but some basic things that I got thanks to them. And so I don't know if it's a general thing, and I know people who maybe didn't know about that, and so I recommend this book to many people. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a general thing. I would just say my parents were extraordinary. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'm looking at your bookstagram right now, and you talk about in your latest post, going dark.
Mhm.
You say in 2016 alone, online social media platforms played a role in 90% of all radicalization cases. Not only has social media facilitated extremist relationships, it has also sped up the radicalization process. That's that's kind of an astounding 90%. I mean, that's kind of scary. To
Yes.
to me, that shows what do you so my last question about, racism stuff, but I saw this and I wanted to bring this up, is that do you think that other forces are seeing this and are pulling the strings, or do you think this is just happening by happenstance? Is this just happening because social media has given us these tools and this is just kind of inevitable, or do you think somebody is planting these seeds in here and the sees the way that this radicalization can happen?
So I
That's a
think
broad question.
it's definitely organized. So
Mm,
definitely use, and she says it in her book. It's just that before, when people were forming, like, I don't know, fascist groups, or
mm,
I don't know, anything. Um, they would have to find people through their networks, through their friends, meet people, will go into bars. I don't know how you could do it
yeah.
in many different ways. But now it's like, I have this idea, I have this mission or this belief, and I will use social media. So I think that it's inevitable in a way that people are people are not doing this randomly, like they know what they're doing. Some are just sharing ideas and influencing other people, but most of the things she talks about is that people are recruiting other people on social media, and social media is amazing for them. We can find people
Does
everywhere.
does it discuss the dangers of also the dark web, which is kind
Yeah.
of where a lot of them, like, it might start with Facebook, but I imagine that the recruiting process to the other platforms that have no, I don't even know what those are like, but I
Yeah.
have to imagine does she go in, does this person go into, yes, it's a woman, go into detail about what of that, is that happening as well?
Yes, she does. And what's interesting is she tried infiltrating all those groups she talks about. And that's where you see the process. So some, not all of them were through social media, I think. I'm thinking about one, I think fascist, like neo-Nazi group. And I think that wasn't through social media. But many other were through social media. And indeed, I think it starts with generally like on main platforms, through a post or message or something you share or you comment, and they see that. And then you will go through, like, let's say, darker and darker platforms, and to get access to a community. Discord for that is a really great platform, but a really dangerous platform, because there are so many groups like this, and then they have like chats and stuff, and hidden platforms and all that that we don't know about, that we don't use. And
Yeah.
and then they communicate like that, they organize themselves like that. And so definitely she explores that. And I think it's really interesting, because this stat you just read is really showing how much social media plays, like how big the role of social media is in all that. So I think it's really, really interesting.
Interesting. All right, enough about that, but I thought that was a fantastic statistic. Let's so last I want to ask you about books, and then we'll move on to some fun stuff. Tell me a little bit about, you talk about reading 100 books in a year. Would you say that's just the consistency that we talked about from before, that's kind of where that's coming from? Or
Yes, yes, it's definitely consistency. I think there is no other way you can read lots of books without being consistent. And I'm not spending days or my weekends reading. And I really want people to understand that it's not, you don't have to dedicate like hours in a row sitting down reading to read a lot of books. And one
unless
thing I
you
want
got
to,
to unless you got to like December 29th, and you wanted to read 100 books, then yeah, you probably would have to spend hours
then
and not eat.
you stop everything, you don't sleep, and you don't do anything. No, it's true. But but one thing I do want to clarify before talking about all that is that it's not a goal per se to
Mm,
read lots of books. It should never be a goal. So your goal is not to read 100 books a year, it's to
yeah.
learn from 100 books a year. So if you can't read 100 books a year without just like being like, what did I just read? Or like reading through it, like skipping paragraphs and just like, cross readings. And if you can't do like a proper reading, then don't try to read that much. Because when reading, then just to say, oh, I read 100 books and I forgot all about them and didn't really
Yeah.
read them. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I've had comments, because I created a reel talking about that, like how to read 100 books in a year. And some people commented saying it's not about the quantity, it's about, or I don't remember exactly the comments. And I
Yeah.
totally agree.
Yeah.
But does it mean you can't? Should you read then less if you can read more? No.
Yeah.
If you can read more and learn as much, do it. And this really was about that. It was not about the objective, like the numerical objective. It was really about how to read more and learn more, and how to help you do that. So
Mm.
yes, I think it's consistency. I think it's all the things I talked about before. Making sure you reading 5 minutes is okay. Just read whenever you can. Just have a book always with you.
Mm. Now, what do you think of what is your take on like speed reading? I think we need a different term for that, but how do you feel about that?
So if it's speed reading, like you're a quick reader, good for you.
Mm.
If you're
Yeah.
speed reading to speed read,
Yeah. It's just a means goal.
I
You read
mean,
100
why?
books, but you didn't retain anything. So it's like, You were better off just reading one book.
Exactly.
than I
So
suppose 100 books. Yeah.
why are you doing speed reading? Like, if you want to learn about speed reading and like reading faster, that's really nice. That's really cool. And like progressively, what's that? Oh, speed reading.
This is a really good book on this. Tony Buzan wrote it.
Oh, great. I don't know.
It's actually an interesting book. 'Cause it goes into the benefits, and I mean, to do this, my problem with speed reading is that, like, I've learned it, but I don't see enough of. Uh, I feel like there's a large drop when you don't do the amount of work required to do this.
Mm,
Like it, I don't feel like it stays there. Like, I feel like there's this huge drop if you are not doing this amount of work to maintain the speed reading. So that's the thing I would like to see with speed reading. It's something that maintains it so that you could be doing it moderately and not have to spend, an hour every day just to retain the speed reading. Like, I feel like that you can learn it, but then it doesn't stay with you. And that's my question I would ask to, like, Jim Quick, who's wrote the book Limitless. He's a big advocate of this. Like, what do we do to keep it up when it kind of drops? Because I see, even in myself, if I'm not, practicing it consistently, I feel like there's this huge drop. Why doesn't it just kind of stay there? Like, is there no, like, medium ground of where it can stay? Does it have to be, it's like you went from 1,000 words and then you went right down to like 400 words per minute. So that's my biggest problem with speed reading right now, is
mm.
I'm not seeing enough of the tools to retain the knowledge that you learn from it. I think it's beneficial, but I feel like there's more that needs to be done. I don't know, like, from the apps I've seen, I don't see anybody really addressing the sustaining it. Like,
Mm.
how much time should you have to invest in speed reading to be reading 1,000 words per minute? I mean, I've talked to people that have read who can read 1,000 words per minute. He talks about how most of it is coming from pictures, but I don't know. That's kind of where I get on. So I was just curious where you lie on there, where you lie on speed reading, and
No,
you
that's
answered that.
interesting. And I haven't explored the subject at all.
Mm.
I'm just all in for reading faster,
Cons-
but
Consistency
progressively.
is the thing.
Yeah, because I'm like, if I could read faster, but as well as I'm doing right now, so retaining as many things and all that. Yeah, definitely. But I also don't feel the need to, and
Mm.
maybe that's bad, because in the end it would be an improvement,
Yeah.
to be able to read faster and still retaining
Yeah.
exactly the same amount of stuff. So I think it's a subject that definitely you made me want to
Yeah.
explore by talking about it.
The thing I like about it is having the option. I feel like that's
Yes.
the thing that a lot of people don't have, the option. And I think there's such a huge, I don't know. I feel like speed reading is the wrong term for it. Is it just,
Yes.
it makes
Yes.
it sound like it's going done. Like that's what it feels like when you say speed reading. It doesn't, it's the same thing. It's the same conundrum with video games. It's just like, it doesn't really mean what it means. It's not really, it is a game, but it's not, it's like these terms that have just kind of gone, oh, it's like, we need a better term. But anyways, yeah, I'm fascinated to hear how you see the subject as you talk more about it. Anyways, moving on. Now we're going to talk just about you, just some, like, rapid, fire, quick stuff. No more, racism and topics of the world. So you, I love that you had the highlight tabs in there, and I assume that's because you don't want to highlight the book, because it's like when you highlight in a book, it's like, oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Is that kind of where that's coming from?
Exactly. No, that's exactly that. I have a problem. I mean, it's like, it's not a big deal, but I have a problem with that, because I don't want to ruin my books, and it wouldn't be ruining them, highlighting them and writing notes in them. And I totally get that point, like from people who are telling me about why it's okay to do that. But still, I'm like, I can change my mind. And what if I change my mind? And now it's highlighted.
I know. It's like you can't get it off. You have to buy another book. I had somebody actually tell me, who said, well, I don't mind buying more books. And I'm like, so what? You want like 5 copies of the same book? I'm like, to me, that's insane. I don't want that many. I want one book, and, I want to be able to do with it that I like. So I like what you bring to it by having the highlight tabs. Is, it's like, okay, you can still get the highlight out of it with the physical book, but you don't have to, it's not permanent,
Yes, exactly. And I don't think if it makes sense, because in the end, we like change those highlights. No, because if you really think about it, I highlighted the things because I found them interesting, and this will never change. Like tomorrow I can say, oh, I don't find it interesting anymore, but I did find it interesting yesterday. And so there's a reason why I found it interesting. So that doesn't really make sense. And I think also it's not really good for the environment, like so much plastic and all that. So but I, like, so many times I've told myself, okay, tomorrow I'm switching to the highlighter and like forget about those tabs, and I'm gonna do that. And I just can't. I don't know why I can't.
I think it's because it's permanent. Once you do that, like, you can't, you can't go back and like get rid of. I mean, I guess you could like get white out, but then you'd white out the text, and it would be like, what's the point? But yeah, I find that with, like, there's some people that like love to like just tear up their books and they'll underline and do everything. For me, I like to keep it like as nice as I possibly can, and then I don't know. I think it's how you see the book. Some people are just like, just throw it around wherever, and they like to see that as ownership of the book. It's like, well, it's my book, so I'm doing it. But for me, it's like, I don't know, it's like a respect for the book. It's like I want to make sure that it looks nice and everything. So yeah, I don't know. I thought that was funny when I saw that on your Instagram. It's like, oh, I bet that's she doesn't like highlighting in the book either.
I think it's something in our heads, and it's like we don't want to. But fair enough. Like I'm happy like that. I'm just conscious of maybe the fact that it's off plastic, and it's not great. But maybe I'll change my mind, and next time we talk, I may say, oh no. I've given up on those, and I'm highlighting my book. And
they're all just highlights. It's just a whole highlighted book,
Yeah.
And then the danger comes sometimes you'll highlight too much, and you're like, what am I looking at? It's just a highlighting.
Yes,
it's just
true.
It's now the highlighting is redundant because it's just too much. Now you have dogs. How old are the dogs?
So yeah, I mean, I used to have 2. One died recently. But I still have one. Actually, not here, my parents' home. But thankfully I see them very often. And that's something that I really, really miss in my life. And I'm trying to convince my boyfriend to get a dog. But it's not reasonable because we both work a lot and we travel a lot. So it doesn't make any sense. Like, when you get a dog, you need to spend a lot of time with them. And so
you want to make the dog antisocial.
Yeah, exactly. But I do miss it. And so I have this dog that is a German Shepherd in France. And I think he is 8. I'd say 8. It's either 6 or 8. Something like that. But I love dogs.
I do too. Do you have a beginning of the day routine?
Yes, I do. So I was talking about waking up, drinking some water, going to the bathroom, and then reading. And so generally, I allocate maybe 30 minutes to reading. If I feel like more, I just read more. and if I know I have like, I don't know, a meeting in the morning or I need to go somewhere in the morning, I'll just read less, obviously. But that's, I would say, like around 30 minutes in the morning. And then what I do is I do some like fitness workouts
Mm.
for about 45 minutes, 30, 45 minutes. I rarely do 45 minutes, so more 30. And then I take my shower, dress up, get ready, have my breakfast, and that's it. I mean, I actually have in my notes, to let me check if I didn't forget anything,
Yeah.
my routine for the morning and the night. And I wrote it down because I was sure I would forget it. And so I have it. And oh, I forgot. Yes, after reading between exercising and between reading and exercising, I obviously check my Instagram, all my DMs, my
Yeah.
notifications. That's a really important point because yeah, it gets busy. And so I do that, and usually I also do like Duolingo Italian.
Oh, you do Duolingo?
I do
Cool.
Duolingo.
I'm doing Duolingo right now. Right now I'm in the finals of the Diamond League with like the craziest
Wow.
people. Yeah, so it's like I have to just it's
Which
like as
language are
soon
you learning?
German.
Nice.
German, yeah.
That's
I
hard.
I learned German. My acting coach wanted me to learn it for the staccato level of speaking. He thought that would help me
Mm,
speech wise. And then I do a little bit of French is it's legato. It's the opposite
true.
of
Okay.
German. Yeah, so that, and then I learn a little bit of Spanish, but yeah, German is the one that I'm spending like the most amount of time. But
Wow.
yeah, I think I have done 722 days in a row on
Wow,
Duolingo.
that's really
Yeah.
impressive. Well
I,
done.
I
That's
sometimes
really
I have to look at that and go, yeah, that's real. That is real,
wow.
is it's so right now I'm in like the finals, and it's like week 2 of the semifinals of the final. I don't know what we get, but it's just like you're just with like a bunch of people, all doing like yesterday, the beginning of the week starts, and it's like you're already seeing people up to like 500 all the way at like 20 minutes into it. And it's just like,
Wow.
how fast can we go? It's crazy. It kind of becomes a mean skull, but yeah, I love Duolingo. I think it does a really good job of because they continue to improve it. Um, One of the last things I want to ask you about is, do you meditate?
So I've tried, and I keep trying.
Yeah,
I think it's really something you need to practice. It wasn't natural for me at all. But I saw the benefits of it, and also the fact that since my job is really busy, and uh, yeah, I have a really busy life in the end. And otherwise, I just keep thinking about everything. And even when
yeah,
I go to bed, I'm thinking about, oh, I forgot to do that, or things like
yeah.
that. And sometimes you just need to. And I think during the pandemic and the lockdown, it was really important to practice those skills. And many people started to like, yeah, just like explore meditation and all that. And I did. And I think when I feel very stressed or overwhelmed, I do it. Thankfully, lately it hasn't been the case, so I haven't meditated in a long time. But I think it's a really important thing. And I have this challenge, like there was like a meditation challenge, like every day you were doing like practicing meditation to improve. And I think it's really good. And we were talking about always having a book, and because if you have to wait, etc. But I did say that it's important as well to just either think and reflect on things or just do nothing and meditate. And we need
Exactly.
that.
Do you have a nighttime routine?
I do. So it's not accurate because obviously sometimes I'll finish work at 7, sometimes at 9. sometimes later. So it
Yeah.
depends. But what I do generally is having dinner many times. Like for instance, right now it's almost 10 p.m. So I don't think I'm gonna have dinner. And I don't feel very hungry. And I had lunch at 3 because my day was so crazy at work that I had lunch while having a meeting with someone else. And so I don't feel very hungry. But anyway, that's not the point. So generally having dinner, let's say hopefully around 8. And then I'm just gonna take care of my Instagram a bit, like reply to all the messages I received in the day, comments and things like that. And maybe also think about strategy for the following day or following week. And then I'm just going to disconnect and pick up my book and read. And that's it. And until I'm tired or until I'm fed up and I don't have a TV at home. And I do watch series, like I do have Netflix and I do watch series sometimes, but not at night. And yes, I think my routine is mostly reading, and that's a way for me to relax as well, no matter how complicated. And I wouldn't say, for instance, I would read Think Fast and Slow before bed, definitely not. But even if it's like a complicated matter, if it's not too complicated, I would read it. It relaxes me and it makes me feel like I'm learning something else, and getting out of my apartment and my job and my family thing.
Interesting. All right, cool. What last question. What films or television do you like?
That's a good question. So I love documentaries, obviously. We talked about that. The series I'm currently watching, and I'm really surprised I like it, is The Crown. And it's usually really not my type of thing. But I decided I will watch it because I think it's interesting for me also to learn about the history of the monarchy and the recent monarchy in the UK. I live in the UK, so I thought it was interesting, even if many historians said that it's not accurate. Like, so many things that are in the series didn't happen or are wrong. So I'm aware of that. I'm not like, oh, I'm learning, like I'm reading an history book. I'm aware of that. But I think it's really interesting. And I really like this series. Surprisingly, it's really human as well. Like, like talking about all the difficulties of the queen and like being a queen, what being a queen is, and family, all those like reflection on family. For me, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know what you like to watch.
Do you like Game of Thrones as well?
Oh, so if I say, so I think I'd say that there are two, so we're talking about two fiction, like or how do we call it, like kind of superhero thing, like fantastic, or
well, I know you like Guardians of the Galaxy from the thing there.
I like the character, he's so cute.
Yeah.
The movie, yes, but it's just the character that is so sweet.
Groot.
And and because my boyfriend like watches a lot of those movies, sometimes I just watch them with him. I wouldn't say I love them, but Groot was super cute. That's why I have those little like statues in my
I saw that.
apartment and on my library. But then I would say, like, in terms of films, Harry Potter may be the only film, like fantastic film series that I like. And you, as you said, Game of Thrones would be the only fantastic series that I liked and that I watched and enjoyed. I don't know if
except for the last episodes.
I actually watched the last episode in the US in like a bar. I think we were in Louisiana.
So everybody hated it.
And so I wasn't so, I mean, it was confusing and we all had our theories and stuff. I don't know. I would need to rewatch it. And I wasn't so like engaged and so, so I wasn't, yeah, some people really reacted because they were so into it. I liked it. I wouldn't say I was a fan of it.
Mm,
But I liked it, and it
yeah.
was entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the problem with Game of Thrones is when they get away from the books, it starts to dwindle, because if you look at the early episodes, it seemed like it took them like a whole season just to get somewhere. And now all of a sudden in these later seasons, just like, oh, yep, they're here. I'm like,
Yes.
wait a minute, shouldn't that be like, so it seems like they lost the idea of time, which was something that was very prevalent in the first seasons, especially the books, is how long it took to get places. And there was
Hmm.
this amount of time. And then when you get to these later seasons, 6, 7, 8, it's like that all went out the window. It's like, oh, they're there. Like, how? It's like they were just, if it felt like the creators wanted to wrap it up, and it was just like,
It's true. It's true.
but
That was my feeling as well.
yeah,
No, that's true. I remember now. It was 3 years ago though, or something like that, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been a while. It's been a
Mm.
while. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for doing this interview. This was so much fun.
No, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your
Yeah,
podcast.
this
I feel honored,
is great.
and yeah, I loved having a discussion with you about all of
Yeah,
that, and also the previous discussions we had, and I hope
yeah,
we'll keep talking in the future and sharing the passion of
absolutely.
books. And you've got a great podcast here. I love
Thank you.
great whole like people who came in on the podcast, and
Yes, thank
and
you.
yeah, I'm really happy. Thank you.
Thank you. How can people reach you?
So I would recommend going on Instagram directly, and so they can find me at Just.Another.Good.Story. So just another good story, but you separate the words with dots. So you can find me there. You'll see Mathilde, nonfiction reviewer, book reviewer. So people can find me there, can DM me. I love when people either DM me with questions, like do you have a book to recommend about this subject? Like I'm starting a new job or whatever. Like, do you have a book to recommend? Or just reaching out like, how can I, as you say, like, how can I start reading? I feel like I don't have time. Do you have any tips? Or yeah. And so like, feel free to DM me. Feel free to follow me, obviously, and look at my content, and I hope it'll be helpful to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Justin.
Okay, that about does it for this interview. I want to thank Mathilde. It was great to talk with her, and you can find her at Just.Another.Good.Story, and you can DM her for reviews and collaborations. Once again, this is the season finale, and a new season begins. And I just want to thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please, send me, you know, give me a little review, or DM me. And you can DM me at Justin Yachts, and you can find me at Justin Yachts. And I will see you next time on the DMF.